Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight to join me in conversation with Katharina Grosse and Mary Weatherford. This is a very special occasion, and I would like to welcome both artists to Making Their Mark, works from the Shah Garg Collection, the Kemper Art Museum, the Sam Fox School, and Washington University. Our panel today will focus on the ways both artists engage with forms of non-figurative painting that have a strong sensorial and emphatic presence. We will explore how their polyphonic structures invite careful seeing to suggest alternative imaginations of the world. First, though, I would like to thank Komal Shah for her extreme generosity to sharing her important collection with us. It brings together over 80 works by an intergenerational and international group of women artists, featuring a wide spectrum of artworks, including paintings, sculpture, installation, textile, beadwork, and ceramics from the past 8 decades. The exhibition emphasizes dialogues between artists who circumvent and break through conventions in art making, embracing craft techniques, new technologies, conceptual inquiries, inventive methods, and uncommon materials. Making Their Mark envisions art history as an interconnected web of influences and affinities between artists who subvert traditional narratives and hierarchies, and 2 of them are with us today. Making Their Mark is the first public exhibition of this notable collection, presented in conjunction with the publication Making Their Mark, Art by Women in the Shah Garg Collection, co-edited by Mark Godfrey and Katie Siegel, who was here a couple weeks ago. The exhibition is curated by Cecilia Alemani and was first presented in New York at the Old Dia Foundation, and is now in its 3rd iteration after Berkeley here at Washington University, where it was co-curated by myself. Making Their Mark, works from the Shah Garg Collection, is made possible through the lead support of the Shah Garg Foundation and the leadership support of the William T. Kemper Foundation. All exhibitions at the Kemper Art Museum are supported by members of the Directors Circle, with major annual support provided by Emily and Teddy Greenspan, and additional generous annual support from Deborah Beckman and Jakob Kutzebay, Michael Foreman and Jennifer Rice, Julie Kemper-Fourier, Joanne Gold and Andrew Stern, David and Dorothy Kemper, Ron and Pamela Mass, and Kim and Bruce Olson. Further support is provided by the Lewin Art Fund, the Ken and Nancy Kranzberg Fund, and members of the Kemper Art Museum. Today, I would also like to extend my thanks to Phoebe and Spencer Burke, Nancy Ilvisacker and Wesley Jones, Helen Kornblum, Kathleen Rogers and Toby Martin, Kim and Bruce Olson, and Lisa and David Weiss for making this evening so very special. My very special thanks also to Dean Carmen Colangelo for his ongoing and continuing support and compassion for the Kemper Art Museum. But now I would like to focus on tonight's main actors. One of the most important painters today, Katharina Grosse, is internationally recognized for her bold, haptic paintings and saturated use of color. She is celebrated for her large-scale, on-site works that she paints across built and natural environments. Large and powerful to behold, Grosse's paintings create heightened sensorial perceptions through their emphatic material presence. The act of painting, conceived by Grosse as a prototype of human activity, and the ways she challenges subjectivity and selfhood, long intrinsically associated with the medium of painting, may be understood as a means for reckoning with the world beyond the canvas. She studied at the Kunstakademien in both Münster and Düsseldorf, Germany. She has held professorships at the Weißensee Kunsthochschule in Berlin and Kunstakademie Düsseldorf. Her work can be found in museums and collections around the world, such as the Albert Knox Gallery, Buffalo, Aachen Museum for Moderne Kunst, Copenhagen, Baltimore Museum of Art, Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, Centre Pompidou, Paris, Museum of Modern Art, New York, und Staatliche Museen zu Berlin, among many others. Her most recent exhibitions and installations in 2025 include Choir for Art Basel's Messeplatz Project Commission, Wunderbild at Deichtorhallen Hamburg, and the Sprayed Deer at Staatsgalerie Stuttgart. Grosse also recently exhibited, and I hope all of you have seen that, Studio Paintings 1988 to 2022, Returns, Revisions, Inventions at the Kemper Art Museum. And in addition to that, she has a site-specific installation at Washington University's Sumner's Recreation Center. Grosse has received honors such as the Oskar Schlemmer Prize, the Otto Ritschl Kunstpreis, the Fred Thieler Prize for Painting, and many, many others. Mary Weatherford is recognized also as one of the leading painters of her generation, as well as one of the most astute and daring practitioners taking on and challenging the huge legacy of American abstraction. As she explores and expands the medium's possibilities, she creatively challenges its history by seizing opportunity to break with tradition at every turn. Her notable incorporation of sculptural and everyday elements, including the neon tubes, which I really love, that have been a presence in her work since 2012, as well as her embodied approach to painterly gestures, have allowed her to employ abstraction as both a formal language and a highly personal mode of engagement with the world outside the studio, in particular as some difficult kind of translation of the American landscape. Mary Weatherford received her BA in Art History and Visual Arts from Princeton University and an MFA from the Milton Avery School of the Arts at Bard College. Her recent survey exhibition, Canyon, Daisy, Eden, was presented at the Tang Teaching Museum and Art Gallery at Skidmore College and Site Santa Fe in 2020 through 2021. She also had solo exhibitions at the Museo di Palazzo Grimani in Venice, Aspen Museum of Art, the David Kordansky Gallery in Los Angeles, and Gagosian, New York. Her work has also been featured in recent group exhibitions, including the Orange County Museum of Art, the Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Quebec, SF MoMA San Francisco, and the Museum of Modern Art, New York. In addition to the Shah Garg Collection, Weatherford's work is featured in collections such as the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Museum of Modern Art New York, Tate London, K11 Art Foundation Hong Kong, among many, many others. She has also been the recipient of awards such as the Aspen Award, the Durfee Foundation Arc Grant, the California Community Foundation Palevsky Fellowship for Visual Arts, and the Artist Legacy Foundation Award. Please join me in welcoming both artists, and I turn the word over to Mary.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for coming out, and I think everyone can hear me. I'm Mary Weatherford, and first I want to thank Sabine for organizing this iteration of this incredible collection of works. and that would be Komal Shah, who I count as a great friend, who began this project years ago. And I met her at the very beginning, before her focus turned to women artists. She came to my studio in Los Angeles. So thank you to Komal and to her husband, who's not here, Gaurav Garg, and everyone at Shah Garg who's helped with this installation, getting things here safely, Dashel and Alexa, and the team at the Kemper, especially Mark, who oversaw restretching my work. This large work travels rolled, and when it gets to its destination, we unroll it and stretch it, which is quite something. Karis, thank you, Kira, and Jake. And I want to thank David Kordansky Gallery for everything they did to make this happen, and also Gagosian. So I have not so much time, and I don't have my iWatch on, so my wrist is not going to buzz. So I'm just going to try to do this in a very succinct way to perhaps lead you through the most popular question I get is, how did you think up the neon? Now, we don't have a neon painting here, but hopefully this will walk you through my relationship with collage and that very modern practice. So this painting is quite large. It's called Third Riddle, and it's named after the 1920s opera by Puccini that's set in probably Persia, even though it usually says China. And this is a black stain painting. I was making acrylic stains at the time. I lived in New York City. I had a studio at 12 Warren Street above the Fountain Pen Hospital. And it just occurred to me that maybe that color was influenced by fountain pen ink color. So I began making these stain paintings that were probably coming off of quoting from Helen Frankenthaler. And then when I was growing up in the 70s, in Southern California, there were accidents where people would walk through their sliding glass door and cut themselves. So we had companies that then came up with decorative stickers to put on the sliding glass door. So I think of a painting as a sliding glass door. The landscape is out there, so I put a sticker on the front. It helps you not to hurt yourself when you begin to walk through into this other area of imagination. So I've been interested in, and you can just draw a line from 1991 all the way to 2012. How did I think up the neon? I was already coming up with devices to stop your entry into the picture, to mess with the surface. And I showed this at Blumhelm Warehouse. Let me go forward. Okay, so we go 2 years later. It didn't take long. I got very tired of making silk screens. It was a lot of work. And just to kind of situate you, because this is a college in time, I was making the riddle paintings at the same silkscreen studio. Katie Nolan was making the cowboys, and we were working with Donald Sheridan, who was screen printing. So I got tired of making these screen prints. It was a lot of work. I had to take it over to the printer, come back, and I thought, what if I just used the real thing? And I had been making starfish skies, And those were inspired by a film by the surrealist Man Ray that you can see at the Metropolitan Museum right now, and it's called Emak Bakia. And it was made in the hinge between his Dada days and his surreal days. And at some point, he likes to, how can I say, combine different kinds of imagery that's made, like a rayogram and then an actual image. And in this case, the camera goes down to the ocean and rolls, and then the ocean is rolling over your head. And this is called The Ocean is in the Sky. And I made it in 1993. I ran out of blue paint halfway through, and I thought, oh, that was a mistake. But then I liked it, and a kind of new formal thing began to happen. So this was the first with the real objects glued in. Then we skip forward. A lot of things happened to, this is 2014, and I showed this with David Kordansky Gallery, and it's called Oxnard Ventura. And I was born in a town called Ojai, O-J-A-I, and it's in the hills above Ventura, and it's a special place for the history of art because that was where Krishnamurti lived. And unbeknownst to me, when I was studying art history, and probably most people, you always wonder, what is that strange Mondrian with the man with the glowing eyes? Well, many of the European modernists were card-carrying theosophists. And what is theosophy? It's maybe a mashup of many Eastern thought, and it was founded by a woman named Madame Blavatsky. And Krishnamurti was sent to live in Ojai, California, because his younger brother had tuberculosis. And I have to kind of go forward, but down the hill from Ojai is Oxnard Ventura, a beach town. And it looks like a sailboat, I thought. So this is like the weather in Oxnard Ventura. This large piece is called Cock Robin, and I started finding images in the paintings. It looked like a chicken being attacked, and so I went with that title, and it has neon on it. Then we get to Light Falling Like a Broken Chain, which was made after a visit to Kauai and seeing the flowers and the weather there, and the very rapid changing of the weather where a storm would blow in and go away and the sun would come out and the giant seabirds would drop into the estuary fishing. This is installation at Palazzo Grimani. These were all based on a painting by Titian of the Flaying of Marsyas that he made at the end of his life. And I could point out where the images in there. I made all of these at once, and it was a kind of updated version of the myth. And then this is the latest work that I have in this. This is called The Surrealist, and it is there's a word for it when the entire thing is named after it. But I thought that this looked like the head of a bull with a forelock, and then the surrealist has some attributes: a large starfish, the starfish collage has come back, and a light. And so this is from my latest David Kordansky show called The Surrealist, and that is my presentation.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Thank you so much, Mary. That's exciting. I'm all psyched up and don't even want to contribute much more, but I'm so happy to be here as well. Thank you, Sabine and Carmen, and it's great to meet so many other friends from all those 2-3 times I've been here in St. Louis. It's always such a pleasure to come here. And now I have the task of talking about my work within 7 minutes, right? That was, and that is something that is actually interesting for me. Time is a very important ingredient in my work. So I was trying to put all my life into 7 minutes. This is my first work. I did it when I was 7 or 10. And the astonishing thing about this egg is not that I did it, but that my mother kept it. And she kept it for almost 30 years. And one day she came to the studio and said, "Look, isn't that amazing? That's almost the prototype of your practice." And I thought, yeah, that's true. So a painting can land anywhere. One of the things I believe and I work with and I explore. So the moment it lands on something that is not a canvas, it changes that surface. So the egg stops being an egg, but it starts being an infinite painting surface. And you turn the egg, you know, you're involved, you touch it, you feel it, and you also kind of cover the painting while you look at it. So as a spectator, we actually disturb the work. And that is something that I find so fascinating. So it's not only that the painting changes the egg, but also the egg makes the work. And that's when I really understood, contemplating the world, I need to do something with it, on it, or for it. And I wanted painting to be part of our everyday life. That was very early as thinking, even at 7 years old. And I thought a painting should be very close to you, really like almost aggressively close. That's why I decided we do a little experiment, and I throw the painting, and you, well done. There we go. So we implement the work right away into our life. And here we have a second moment. So that's my first oil painting on the right-hand side. And when I started painting, I was quite old. I was maybe 19. So from 7 to 19, a lot of other things happened. And I was invited to do a field trip to do landscape painting. I had never done it before. And because I was the last one to be invited, I had a little tent that I slept in, and I painted that tent on the first day I was there in the field where the tent was. And the next day I thought I'd do something else, and I put a piece of paper, glued it together, hoisted it up between these two trees, and on the left side, can I also point with this actually? Oh yeah. Here on the left side, there's a triangle of twigs that are mounted up, and I thought that was also a really good work. You know, I mean, I was not knowing what I was doing, but between these two things, the painting on the canvas, which is a merely pictorial field for studio work, and on the other side of the spectrum, something that I did in the world with my knowledge of painting that I had just gained by making that little tent painting. And that kept to be very important for me to move between these two scale shifts, you know. So many, many years later, after studying, after traveling to different countries, I realized the relationship to other worlds, to other environments is very important to me, to other studios that were maybe empty, where I had to start it from scratch, you know, was important to me. So I discovered the spray gun because it also helped me to free my limitations from my body, you know, abilities. So I landed sometime in Marfa as a resident, and that was, I think, my second spray painting I made. And that very night where I made that photograph, I happened to leave the light bulb on. And that's the reason why I discovered it's not only a wall painting, it's a painting in a space, it's a painting in a building. The building is sitting on a street in the sunset, and people in cars drive by and see it. So all of a sudden I saw the interchange and the intermingling of all these different elements, and the world started for me to be like many, many images sitting embedded in one another. And they have different degrees of reality, they have different degrees of function, and these two things perforate one another, they don't extinct one another. So these are actually is an experience of simultaneous contradictions, if you will, because the built space has a different spatial reality than the painted space, which is an imagined space, or maybe the word space even doesn't really fit that notion. And after many wall paintings and shows, and I was exploring these thoughts even further in institutional works, I got stuck, you know. I got kind of entangled in my own, if you want, maybe success. And I thought I have to do a work that is only for myself, that is not an institution, that has no audience, that is not in the studio, that is completely embedded in my utmost private sphere. And I decided to paint my bedroom. At the time, I had two places where I lived, in Berlin and in Düsseldorf. And I came back to Düsseldorf. I had just moved into that space, so you can still see here the boxes. I just knew how to do it, and now I don't. Well, now I'm actually wrong here. It's getting worse. No, I have to, sorry. No, but that was nice, though, to see Mary's work again. And so I painted my bedroom, and the experience that I made, that was very interesting. I thought I would maybe lose something, but I painted over all these objects, and the different contour lines of the objects would disintegrate by the paint going over them. And I thought, what if the definition of these objects would always be so soft? What if we could always change and have a new perspective of the hierarchy of the things? What if this wasn't so binding, that there was a contour between the duvet and the cushion and maybe the back of the bed and the wall? And I started to also invite narrative elements into my work. Is that a sign I should stop? Or? Not stop, but accelerate. Okay. Next thing was to test the work more into these zones of contradiction. So one of the most maybe intense ones was this 5-mile corridor from Philadelphia main station, where the train would leave for New York, and I painted 5 or 6 different spots. One of them was this rubble and the trees. You could just pass by within 2 or 3 seconds, you would see it, and then it was gone. So there was a very extreme experience of ephemerality, if you want, which is of course true for all these works that I do on site. They only have a certain lifespan of maybe half a year, or here in this case for Tilden. Was one of a very important work I did for MoMA PS1, where my relationship to contradictory situations changed. So land and water as a border, as really like a zone of very interesting conflict. So I would start to look very specifically for conflicting zones, which are, I think, of utmost theatricality and heighten your sense of awareness towards your life, towards your agenda, but also towards the imaginative pictorial space. Sometimes I can't paint the things, the objects, or the houses, or, So I'm invited sometimes by places that are listed where I can't do anything but maybe invent a new form. And I came up with this huge cloth of 8,000 square meters that are kind of crammed into this space of 2,000. So it was also about shrinking space into something, like you pack a suitcase almost. And I hoisted up that cloth, as you see on the right-hand side, under the ceiling structure. So there is an ecology and interdependence of the house and the work. You don't even know what is which causes, which is the dominant force. So there is a sense of domination that I was very interested in, and I cut little slits into the cloth. You could enter it, and on the left-hand side you see people in it. I painted it, and I also generated a space that was non-Euclidean, geometric. It had an almost infinite formality of spatial hidden and spatial obvious spaces, and it would people would undo with their feet the work. Just a little note to the painting you have mentioned, Sabine. I'm very, very grateful and happy that it is here in the gym of Woshu, and I was wanting to make a little excursus back into the times of the 15th century, because I absolutely adore, and it's still one of the sources of so much inspiration for me, is the other paintings of Fra Angelico in the cloister of San Marco in Florence. And Fra Angelico is being honored right now with an amazing show in Palazzo Strozzi and in the cloister. And this is a place where you can still see the works as they probably were back when he painted them. And it is very, very rare we can see things where they were made. And what they made for. And what I was so fascinated by back when I lived in Florence for a year was that there is a correlation of one cell, one window, one door, one painting, and possibly one person in the room. And it's almost like a petri dish where you can really study what that does and what it means to have all these different options of reality around you. And I kind of turned that inside out for the Washu painting, where you have not a neat organization of these different elements anymore, but where they are kind of in a synchronized way, everybody doing their own thing at their own pace and time frame. So the painting is perforated by all these windows and little outlets and doors, but then there is down there you see the mirrors. People are weightlifting. We were just there today, and it's in full function, you know. So sometimes the studio is the most important source for your development as well. So it's not always going outside and finding solutions, but you see here a little glimpse of what I do when I paint. I have a couple of canvases, 4, 5, 6, 7 in one row, sometimes 20, and I go from one to the next to go really repeat, deviate, try out, negate, do again. And after a little moment, it becomes like almost a mesh, an entanglement in itself. So this is also a very important starting point for work outside. And just the last little moment, I wanted to mention the thing you just said earlier on. It's the piece I did for the most important art fair in the world. It's Basel, Switzerland, and there is a big square in front, so you have to pass over the square to go back into the here is the entry. Then you have a big tarpaulin here saying Art Basel that I painted, which hides the building, which is almost like a canvas. And there is also roof surface I could paint. And behind the roof is a clock that I painted. And here you see a water feature that was part of the work. So you see a lot of different elements being synchronized with then the help of people that walked over it. That was almost like an unscripted performance. And it was so fascinating for me to be not only in that architectural or physical context of the city, with probably the biggest one I've done ever, the biggest outdoor painting, which is as big as a soccer field, but also the fair is transactional, it's a business, it has a market logic, whereas my work can't be bought, can't be sold, can't be owned, and disappeared after 7 days when the fair closed its doors. Here we have just 2 details of the other 2 very important, like water and time, that I said was so important for me. And I think that space is the time you need to go somewhere else. Thank you.
This was a wonderful introduction to each of your work, so thank you, Mary, and thank you, Katharina. We have a little time here for a conversation on the panel, but we will not forget to also open the conversation to the audience, so we'll try to accommodate both. I want to start the conversation with just really pointing out that you were just introduced to the work of 2 very different painters who still have a lot of common qualities in their work. And one of them is certainly this kind of, for me at least, very strong sensorial quality with which I sort of always struggle, or which I try to challenge in much of my own writings about painting, because it is a quality that is distinct for painting. So both Mary's and Katharina's work go beyond sight alone. There are strong evocations to touch the work. There are evocations of sound and even smell to a certain degree, at least for me. And what is also there is then, if you look at these paintings in the exhibition, there's always the imaginary presence of the painter there. So that is something for me which is a common maybe quality of both. Specifically, if I see Mary's footprint in her large painting as an example of what that imaginary presence of the painter might be. I would like, though, to start this conversation, since we are here at a university, with the education you had in very different institutions, Mary at Princeton and at the Whitney, and Katharina at Düsseldorf. So in both cases, very important institutions. And I'm wondering, really, when you studied, it was a time where painting was not so much celebrated, but there was a very serious discourse about the death of painting. And so I'm wondering, how did your education at these respective institutions actually prepare you for a career as a painter?
Okay, we have to turn this on. Is it on? Is it on now? Okay. It's this little button where should I go like this? Okay. Is this working? Okay. Okay. So I know we don't have much time, but it's, oh gosh, it's such an interesting question. It could be discussed for a long time. So I arrived at Princeton in 1980, Reagan's landslide, fall of 80. I went into the architecture department, was working hard there for a couple of years. That's why I love architecture. Took a painting course from a man named, and I'm having a brain freeze, Jerry Buchanan. And his painting stepped back into the painting. And I think that stayed with me. That was his solution, make them go, the surface would move back. There were staircases that went into the painting. I really loved Jerry, he died young. While I was at Princeton, I think I said something, I got into the art department and I said, well, I should learn how to draw something. And they said, oh no, Frank Stella took care of that for us. You don't have to draw a thing. Okay, so then, but mostly I did sculpture, and at that time, curiously, Toshiko Takezu was teaching ceramics in the basement, and everything was very separate. So the painters didn't take photography, which is my regret to this day. I didn't take with them at Gowan, and Toshiko Takezu was in the basement, and it was very like, how can I say, very oriented towards abstraction. However, I will say that Roz Krauss was over at what was called the Institute for Advanced Studies, and she was developing her essay on I can't remember what it's called, very important, someone will inform me, but the multiple, it'll come back to me. But anyway, that was the first time I heard about Sherry Levine. And that really struck something in my mind. And I was going into New York. And so the Princeton's proximity to New York, the presence of Roz Krauss, made it it was like leading into what New York would be, which was very, for me, I went into the Whitney program, was very oriented towards what was happening at Metro Pictures, like not painting at all, highly politically charged. And so when I got out, I had a kind of conflicting information, and I went from there. So I know we don't have much time, but that's what I'll say.
I would love to listen to you a little more. Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating. So I studied, first of all, with a very figurative painter who was very intense in his usage of color, but also with a sculptor who used a lot of raw pigment on his work. And I did performance courses, and I tried to do everything I could, you know. Then Düsseldorf, the academy where Joseph Beuys had taught, he just died 2 years or a year before I went there, so that was very strong. His presence was very influential as well. But then there was also Gerhard Richter teaching, and Namjoon Paik, for example. So there were a lot of very interesting, very diverse perspectives on how to make work. And there was also Kasper König, a curator who was very influential in the first big shows in post-war Germany, but also he taught a course on art in public space and connected us with Jan Hood, who was the director of Documenta and who did a very interesting show called Guest Rooms in Ghent in Belgium. And I saw a Bruce Nauman TV set, for example, in a living room of a Belgian family, for example. You had a bicycle and you would go around 80 places, and they were all works implemented in private space. And that was very, very interesting, and that had a big influence on how I thought we could be in the world, maybe as not only as painters, but as artists. And I was also coming from a background where I had studied a lot, languages and things, you know. I had Latin for 9 years at school, you know. So I was actually not wanting to hear anything about theory. So which was, later on I regretted that kind of, you know, almost aggressive, you could call it subversive, but also I was very ignorant to that side of the discussion. So all these things that might have been interesting and amazing, but also troublesome in your early painter's years, I was kind of making a big, big circle around them. And then I had to come back into the back door and say, wait a second, was it again, you know? So I started to develop some sort of analytical thinking by doing what I was doing, because I had a teacher who wouldn't talk a lot, which I found then, on the other hand, very difficult. Because, as you can see, I talk a lot, so I will stop here. But and also photography was very big in my school. So there was the Becher couple was teaching. Photography was the next big thing. Thomas Ruff, we went out all the time. You know, Katharina Fritsch was one of my best. We went all basically drinking in one pub in that city. The city was very small. And there was Dirk Skreber, a painter who made it early. Monika Beer was in the school. We were the same age, you know. So there were a lot of people. Gursky, for example, Struth, they were all there, and the Richter students were very influential. And it was also fun to be against the main influence, you know, also. So it was a technique of collecting arguments against their argument against painting. So it was a little bit like a chess game always, you know.
When I was in the Whitney program, I was in the museum studies because I wanted to be there. And they sort of enticed me into, oh, you should bring slides of your work and show them. And I remember just being so embarrassed because they were very focused on the radiator in the room where these paintings were hanging. What is the radiator? I was like, well, no, the artwork is not the radiator. Well, the radiator is in the photograph. The radiator must be part of your work. No, the radiator's in the, no. And so this went on, and finally it was very humiliating. And so probably had a big influence on me, is what's in the room.
Well, very interesting. This would really be a topic really for an entire evening, to continue a little bit more about really also these very theoretical discussions in the United States, and not so theoretical, I think, at the time in Germany. Maybe it was more a dialogue between mediums than it was here, but we will leave that to some future discussion. I do want to come back a little bit to your actual practice. And as we already said, it's a very diverse practice. Both of your works, however, are included in the first section of the exhibition, which deals with gestural abstraction. And I would like to hear a little bit more from both of you how gesture actually plays out in your work. Because on the one hand, you know, you can see a lot of fragmented patches, you see opaque areas of paint, transparent ones, but you also see a distance from the canvas. You have many stenciled areas, for example. So there are layers, there are entanglements. So I'm just wondering how, from your perspective, does gesture play into the making of the work?
Well, I just think mine's one giant body print. You know, if you wanted to forge mine, you would have to have a forearm that was exactly this size. Like, because that's I paint with a sponge, sometimes a bit with a brush on a stick, but it's just like how far I can reach. For you, you have the extension of the spray gun.
But maybe just one thing. One thing is also the actual linen you use. Doesn't that sort of is almost like, I don't know, you could call it like a mediator of how your gesture actually manifests?
Yeah, so the linen is, the linen I use is a very thick tooth, and I do it so that I can see a lot of colors at once. So there are hills and valleys, so that the brush stroke is broken into almost dots, like a newspaper photograph, and it's easier on the eyes. How can I say? If I painted on a smooth thing, it would be that the gesture would be so, how, I want to say like fetishized, like, but on this rough surface, the paint moving, my hand pushing the paint across is kind of like broken up. That's all I have on that. But I did. It's
That's
completely
good.
on
I mean,
purpose.
so there is, you know, some kind of mediation or fragmentation.
Yeah.
Of the
Almost like a Xerox, a bad Xerox.
right. So
Definitely.
you know, it is you're sort of breaking up your selfhood through the materials with which you sort of struggle a little bit.
It's, I think, like a pure, it's like David Reed. So I want it to be not that, something that's like becoming in your eye, like happening, dazzling like light on water.
Yeah, I think that I try to also move my head a little over there, you know. So I think that all the ingredients that make my painting, or possibly also your painting, or that they are all of our lives. They are also things that you have in your lives, you know. Only that we process them through that method that we've carved out for ourselves that ends up in a pictorial field. So of course, the digital world, Photoshop, is not only a collage technique, but also something else, has become something else, you know. So I think that we are all informed by these things, but and what we experience in our lives and so on. But I think the word gesture is, in a certain way, maybe not appropriate anymore, or let me say, I think it maybe means that we manufacture something. And that the manufacturing process as a painter is very specific. It is not that we take a piece of glass and make something out of glass, and there is something else in the world out of glass, but we make something else, we make a sculpture. But we make a painting or something in the world that is not of the world. You know, I mean, the paint is not, or the material that we use from zero is not of anything. It's not fabric, it's not a sofa, it's not upholstering, it's not a carpet, it's not a shoe, it's not leather. It is a different materiality that leads to an artifact. And I think that is so specific to the way that we work. And because we do not paint something, or I don't want to talk for you, sorry, I don't want to be patronizing. No, but I'm saying that I think, for example, I would say that there is no photograph, there is no quote, there is no language, there is no direct reference. You know, so that that kind of manufacturing process that is actually coming from zero to something is completely undisturbed in a certain way, you know. And that's how I would now use the word, use the word gesture. Because I think the word gesture comes from a time where it was about authorship, it was about the directness, it was about the imprint, the indexicality, and that is something that is not anymore the case for me. I even would say that my tool is helping me to have a certain distance to all these historical notions, and therefore also the word abstraction is a problematic one for me because it is also a historic one that implies so many different thoughts of what it could be, and I think we should be more specific.
That's actually the next question. I would love to talk more about gesture because I think it is a very important part of the painting discourse that today gesture is something broken. It's, you know, there's no Pollock anymore who 100% can say I'm nature and whatever, you know, manifests on the canvas is a complete, you know, unmediated, direct imprint of the self. We have a much more complicated understanding of ourselves, a more fragmented one today. But in the given the time running away from us, one of the other big topics we wanted to touch upon is actually abstraction. When Mary, you know, when you introduced your work, you were very much actually talking about your paintings in terms of nature, in terms of landscape, in terms of this kind of semantic or emotional translation of nature. So what is with the word and the term abstract? Do you identify with that? Katharina already sort of indicated that she is challenging that term. How about you?
I in the last decade, at least, maybe 15 years, because I'm thinking about the third riddle is maybe different. That almost how I set out to paint the works is not, the reference isn't within the confines of the canvas, but always, in fact, if I set out to paint a painting without an outside reference, I am lost. I have to have the thought to have a direction. So, like well, a poem has language, so then it gets descriptive, but it's usually about temperature and circumstance and emotion, and I say that with, like, you know, you can categorize all these human emotions of sort of the happy ones, the unhappy ones, and even disgust is an emotion, I found out, and these are all kind of chords to choose from. I think the easiest way for me, I went to go hear one of those great big Beethoven symphonies, and he was losing his hearing, and he went to a sort of rehab in the mountains, and it was the sound of the birds and the brook, and it was heartbreaking, and it was a descriptive symphony of the time in the rehab while he's losing his hearing. So the sadness, but then the love of the nature is all in there, and I think that's, I mean, you know, if I could translate, I just want to be a translator. And sometimes the translation ends up being other things I love, like a work of art. Like that's the bull, you know, that's Picasso and all those sort of surreal, like Beaufort and, you know, the painting, I go one place and then the painting turns another way and then it tells me what it is. It's not always doing what I want it to do. And then it just takes a life of its own and comes and says hello. Yes.
Do you still have time, or has it? Yes. It's moving away from us, you just said, and I was just wondering, are we now completely out of time here? Because that would be abstract, you know, that there is no time anymore, you know. But we're still here, and I think that's abstraction.
Over time, just because I have one more question after that, but I would love to hear your answer in the way you challenge the term abstraction, just because we have talked about that for so long. And I would say that, in a way, Mary's answer is very much connected to the imaginary, you know, the way you challenge abstraction. And in your case, we often talked about the unnameable as a better term for abstraction.
No, I think that, I don't know. I mean, every day I have a new thought about it, and I was just thinking, listening to you, that for me, probably the abstract feeling is that to be completely uprooted somehow. And to be in the air between what you had in mind and where you might go, and you don't quite know where it is. And that kind of leap you have to make into that gap of conflict or new negotiation with either yourself or the things you have in mind that you want to do or so on. I think that is really an abstract feeling, you know, that a method almost. Even though you might then still go places that then look like the vernacular that you were familiar, where you started, but they are then maybe flipped or turned. And I think that's why painting is so interesting, or that part of painting is interesting, that can lead to these discussions with yourself, which is that you use an uncoded language. Painting is per se uncoded, as opposed to the digital, which is coded, which uses conventional methods to connect certain things with one another that then generate different areas. But in painting, you have nothing to start with, except for, of course, all the cliches that are there, to start with the canvas maybe also. But I mean, you do use a non-existing process that is leading to time passes, and then you work within a structure. A painting is a structure that doesn't have linear time or isn't binary or causal. So you're actually coming from everyday life, time goes by, you go older and so forth, and then you work within a structure that doesn't have any of these attributes. And that gap between yourself, if you understand it really well, and what you do in the painting, I think that is highly abstract. And you have to maintain that gap really wide. And if you don't do it, you lose that sense of abstraction. And it doesn't mean that you lose it because you paint something that you can recognize. But very often that leads to shrink the gap. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I mean, it's a little bit like when you talk to somebody and all of a sudden 2 hours are gone. You know, and it seemed like 5 minutes. that kind of technique, you know. And if you can use it as a technique, we could make 5 minutes be 2 hours. And that is the miracle about being abstract, that you actually can use it as a real tool. It's not something that camouflages or is highly mathematical or something. I think it's the amazing ability to invert scale to your will.
Interesting. Yeah.
I need to add a bit in there when you were talking that about time, that it maybe not be clear that all of these are made, my paintings are made in one session. So the time that I have, it's like the starter pistol goes off and it's over when it's too dry to move. So I'm always running in front of the drawing, and then it's drying, it's dry, and then it's over. And so it's, I suppose it is performative. It starts, it ends, it's over, it doesn't happen again.
That is very interesting because also you work very fast and you do have to work with your body at the same time. Also this longer conversation, my very last question before it's your turn here in the audience. Is there a female imagination that you would associate with your work? Because
how can I know? How can I know? I'm inside. How can I ever know?
Yeah, I mean, the question is difficult, no? Because you don't say from which point of view you ask it. Do you ask it because of social dominance of the male socialized beings, or do you ask it from like a sensitivity, aesthetic, or I don't know. I mean, when we see the show, that is so amazing, Kamal, what you have collected, because are there 80 artists or more? You see 80 different points of view, you know. So,
and it can be it can, all of these aspects can play a role. It can be social resistance. It can be the acknowledgements that women artists are still not equal to men in the art world. But it could also be something very subjective that, includes a different kind of imaginary, and maybe that is not what we, would associate necessarily as female or something, but if we look closely to your paintings and describe them and characterize them, and then what comes, what the result is, we could say, well, maybe that is also a female imaginary.
Well, I mean, I used cliche feminine images on purpose in the beginning. I used flowers and butterflies and seashells and things that kind of out of still life, and which was always considered like a minor art. There's a great book called Looking at the Overlooked. Bryson, right? He was at San Diego, and I was very interested in that book. So politically, yes, I did that. It was a point I was making at the time because what was very popular was the abject in New York. This was a word that was around, and I thought, I want to do the flip, the non-abject, butterflies, flowers, beauty. I mean, then beauty later on was a word that was talked about. So then I had to steer away from that.
yeah, I mean, when I was studying, I had these friends, so I studied also performance art with Ulrike Rosenbach. You might not know her, but she was a very influential German performer, and I was highly criticized for, at the same time, being in the studio and painting because of the male dominance of German painting. And they said I would never go anywhere with what I was doing, because why would I work in a tradition that is so highly charged with And if you would, if I would take up your narrative, male imagination. And I was so convinced I had to paint that I even didn't want to hear that conversation at all. I didn't even want to look into all the different waves of feminism when I was studying, even though Ulrike Rosenbach was a very, very strong advocate of that theory and that thinking. And then I discovered an anger in me that I could actually let go or explore by painting. So I was so angry sometimes. I would really take over the whole painting, take it off, wash it off, do it again, and then I didn't really know what that anger would really, where was it going, where was the direction of it. And some of the works that was, then I would go over, I would paint in the studio here, and then I would transfer it into a public space and would take that space for granted. I didn't think I would venture out of the canvas courageously, you know, that wasn't at all how I felt in the studio. I would just think painting is a large thing and lands maybe haphazardly a little bit there, but in the, you know, so I did have this feeling of somehow everything is mine, which was maybe a reaction to being subdued. And this kind of gesture, now I use the word very much on purpose, I'm not agreeing, you know, it's like painting it over, but leaving it there still, so leaving it intact. And that was a very different strategy than saying, you all have to disappear, because now I put my big thing there, you know. So I think I almost started to understand maybe there's a different way of manipulating existing hierarchies, so to actually use them, be in them, but still flip them. So, I mean, maybe that is a thing that I started to understand as a possibility. And it didn't come out of a very precise understanding of feminist practice, but it came out of experience in the art world.
You could just Xerox what she said. Yeah, when coming out of school, getting to New York, the women who had all the juice were, showing at Metro Pictures, decidedly not making paintings. So Cindy Sherman, Sherry Levine, Louise Lawler, you just name over. And it was, I made a very conscious decision. What is the next move? Very large paintings. And so my scale was from the very beginning, large paintings. On purpose. That I made small paintings later just had to do with, technicalities of studio size. So I did it on purpose because I could see that where women were going, we're into sort of film and theory, and it was like going into painting was something to pass into. Now, there were plenty of women painters, yes, like we were talking about last night about Susan Rothenberg, but that was almost like a little bit before. And then the women that went not painting. And then Jacqueline Humphreys was in the Whitney program the year after, and she insisted on making paintings. But she had to make a very indexical, I make a mark, it drips. I make a mark, it drips. I make a mark, it drips. Like very methodical program. And so I thought, I will make this free painting. I mean, I'm not so free person, so how free can it get?
Thank you so much. I think that's a very good conclusion to our conversation here, which really could go on for a couple hours. But I would like to give the audience also the opportunity of, we are over time, I acknowledge that, but maybe there's time for 1 or 2 or 3 questions, and we will try to answer them quickly.
So this, I don't know if this is on. This is for Katharina. Could you talk a little bit about how you approach the campus art you did here at Washington University, which is spectacular. I'm just curious how you approach the site, how you approach what you were trying to accomplish, what inspired you about the site, or was it, I mean, I assume that it was site-specific, or not. Maybe you brought it here and just put it up.
No, I did paint it here, and the first thing I did was come to St. Louis. That was my first visit. It was absolutely amazing to see how rich the city is in institutions and things that can be seen. And then I had to, in that context, I understood what the Washoe really does, and I saw the gym, the new building with the old facade. So you have an old portal which you walk through that has a history, and then you have the painting in your back. That was very important to me. So I thought that's very theatrical. You don't expect anything, you turn around and then you see something that you wouldn't even choose to see. So I think that's a very interesting encounter with the work, because I remember when I was a student, or when I was even before studying, I went to Paris, I saw all the museums without any teacher telling me what to do, and I found things that are still, I encountered things by chance that are still meaningful. So this kind of ad hoc encounter is very important. That's the first thing that I liked. And the other thing that I thought was very fascinating, that the space has a function that has nothing to do with art. So that gap that I was talking about is really big. And I don't even have to do anything about it. So people are weightlifting, see themselves in the mirror being actually the ultimate image, portrait or whatever it is, recording of your actions is fantastic. So there is already a pictorial element in there that I can't provide. And then the painting sits within the architecture. So the architectural surface was very important for me, because it has recesses, it has these cut out things, it has an entry, it has counterlight. And so I painted actually a first painting with stenciled out white at the side. And then I painted a second painting on top, and I shifted the contour line. So if you go back, you will discover that the painting looks as if it shifts. So I'm working with the recess of the architecture and take it up in the painting. So I made these two formal decisions, that the contour line has a very important relationship to the architecture, and I wanted the painting to be as independent from the structure as possible. So still take up a lot of space, but still leave a lot of space, so that it doesn't become a decoration or like a screen or a set design, but I wanted it something that floats through, And then I painted it here with the help of a fantastic team from, I think Katie is still here maybe, who helped me work. And then I brought some of my team, and then we built a huge tent so that the spray dust would be kept inside, and I painted it with scissor lifts from below and above, and I think maybe 10 days or so. And in between the painting time, we would discuss it. We would start to have talks about what a painting can do, what it does, what it means in your everyday life, how it works in this arena-like gym. And that's how our discussion on painting evolved. And that was also the reason why we then had further down the line, 2 years later, the show on the portable work that is made in the studio. So also, I think I want to really say that again, that Sabine helped me to understand my work in a different way. So when you work somewhere, you not only just deliver something there, but it does also something with you. It changes your own relationship to your work. So being commissioned a work of that scope by an institution is very meaningful for artists, not only like me, but a lot of artists that are also here in the audience or that study here, because that is almost like generating a laboratory situation for the artist. You can't do that work in your studio. You can do it only here, for you, for me, for Sabine, who is a scholar and a historian, and that all provides a context that is very meaningful. And that was also attractive to me, I thought it was amazing that there were site-related works on the whole campus, by Shah Garg, for example, or you have great pieces here. It's an amazing situation for the people that study here. Thank you.
If there's nothing urgent,
Sorry, I did a lot.
we should conclude the panel. I think it was a fantastic conversation, wonderful introductions to each of your work. Thank you so much, both Mary and Katharina, for coming. And I think we learned a lot about painting and about how to maybe continue continue